A pleasant good morning to the Honorable John Briceño, Prime Minister of Belize, his ministers and ministers of state, to the Honorable Tracy Panton, Leader of the Opposition, and members on her side of the House, and to you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable members, let us now pray. Almighty and eternal God, who through Jesus Christ has revealed your glory to all nations, please protect and preserve Belize, our beloved country. God of might, wisdom, and justice, please assist our Belizean government and people with your Holy Spirit of counsel and fortitude. Let the light of your divine wisdom direct their plans and endeavors, so that with your help, we may attain our just objectives. With your guidance, may all our endeavors tend to peace, social justice, liberty, national happiness, the increase of industry, sobriety, and useful knowledge. We pray, O God of mercy, for all of us, that we may be blessed in the knowledge and sanctified in the observance of your most holy law, that we may be preserved in union and in that peace which the world itself cannot give. And after enjoying the blessings of this life, please admit us, dear Lord, to that eternal reward that you have prepared for those who love you. Amen.
Announcement by the Speaker.
Honorable members, in accordance with Standing Order 84-1, I have been informed that notices of absence have been received from the Honorable Valerie Woods, Speaker of the House, Honorable Henry Charles Usher, Member for Fort George, Honorable Oscar Mira, Member for Belmopan, Honorable Ramon Cervantes, Member from Orange Walk North, Honorable Hugo Pat, Member for Corozal North, and Honorable Kevin Bernard, Member for Orange Walk East. Honorable members, it has been presented to me that there are vacancies in the membership of the following standing committees: Public Utilities, Transport and Communication Committee, the Health and Human Development Committee, the Education, Sport and Housing Committee, the Works Committee, and the Ombudsman Report Committee. Pursuant to Standing Order 73, the Committee of Selection is charged with the task of recommending to the House the names of members to serve on each standing committee. Therefore, I propose, with the concurrence of the House, of course, the suspension of this sitting to enable the Committee of Selections to consider and report to the House on the appointment of members to fill these vacancies in these committees. All those in favor, kindly say aye. All those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. This meeting is now suspended.
Presentation of report from Committee of Selection.
I recognize the Honorable Chairperson of the Committee of Selection.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, I rise to present and lay on the table sessional paper number HR 103A114, report from the Committee of Selection on the appointment of members to fill the vacancies in the Public Utilities, Transport and Communications Committee, the Health and Human Development Committee, the Education, Sports and Housing Committee, the Works Committee, and the Ombudsman Reports Committee.
Honorable members, that report is ordered to lie on the table.
Public business, government business, motion.
I recognize the Honorable Member for Pickstock.
Mr. Speaker, I move, be it resolved that the report from the Committee of Selection on the appointment of members to fill the vacancies in the Public Utilities, Transport and Communications Committee, the Health and Human Development Committee, the Education, Sports and Housing, the Works Committee, and the Ombudsman Reports Committee be adopted.
Honorable members, the question is that be it resolved that the report for the Committee of Selection on the appointment of members to fill the vacancies in the Public Utilities, Transport and Communication Committee, the Health and Human Development Committee, the Education, Sports and Housing Committee, the Works Committee, and the Ombudsman Report Committee be adopted. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill brought from the Senate.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Immigration, Governance and Labor.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues and members of the gallery. Mr. Speaker, I rise to move that in accordance with Standing Order 60, the House do now consider the Senate amendments to the Occupational Safety and Health Bill 2026.
Honorable members, the question is that the House do now consider the Senate's amendment. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Class 2, Class 3, Class 7, Class 8, Class 9, Class 13, Class 14, Class 16, Class 17, 2B, Class 19, Class 21, Class 25, 3, Class 26, Class 27, 1, Class 28, Class 31, Class 37, Class 38, Class 43, Class 44, Class 46, Class 55, Class 56-1, Class 61, Class 62, Class 68, Class 70, Class 71, Class 72, Class 73, Class 74, Class 81, Class 83, Class 84, Class 85, Class 87, schedule.
Honorable members, the question is that the amendments as proposed by the Senate to the Occupational Safety and Health Bill 2026 be accepted. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Papers.
I recognize I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to present and lay on the table sessional paper HR 103B-114, compilation of the People's Constitution Commission, the PCC recommendations. Mr. Speaker, if you to allow me, in accordance with Section 21 of the National Assembly of the People's Constitution Commission Act, I rise to lay before this Honorable House the report of the People's Constitution Commission. As members will know, this process of laying the report before the House triggers the formal publication of the report to the public. Considering this, it is important and necessary to say a few words about the process for constitutional reform, which started back in November 2022 with the enactment of the National Assembly, by the National Assembly, of the Constitution, People's Constitutional Commission Act. Mr. Speaker, it was once explained that a constitution is, and I quote, an instrument that is the framework that regulates the interaction of human beings in the opening life of society. The Caribbean Court of Justice, the CCJ, the nation's highest court, has further explained more recently that, and I quote, the state of Belize is constituted by its peoples. It is their consent to be governed and to be governed in a particular context and way that brings into being what is agreed to, accepted, and recognized nationally and internationally, internally and externally as the state of Belize. It is this consent that bestows integrity, legitimacy, and identify to what is understood to be Belize. Hence, the Constitution of Belize commences with a preamble that begins, and I quote, whereas the people of Belize. The CCJ further said that the shapes, contours, textures, and contents of the agreed context and way are that underpin and inform the Constitution of Belize. Only a lawyer could write this, Mr. Speaker. Thus, the Constitution emerges from and arises out of these basic features, principles, and values. Features, principles, and values that in turn evolve out of the history, cultures, traditions, and experiences of Belizeans, some of which were and are unwritten. To this extent, they together form the essential foundation, framework, and superstructure of Belize, and that, until changed legitimately, they are non-negotiable. The Constitution, Mr. Speaker, is therefore an enduring and the most vitally important source of law in our society. It is therefore declared in the Constitution to be the supreme law of the land, and that any other law, policy, or action which is contrary to the Constitution has no effect. The Belize Constitution came into force in 1981 and has been amended through deletions and additions 12 times, and the last comprehensive constitutional reform undertaken was in 2000 by the Political Reform Commission. As I said earlier, in November 2022, the National Assembly enacted the People's Constitution Commission Act in fulfillment of a central manifesto promise of the government. By its long title, the Act was enacted to provide for the establishment of a People's Constitution Commission, the PCC, to draft and guide the process of promulgating a new constitutional Belize or amendments to the Belize Constitution. The Constitution's work was a vital part of the work undertaken through the Ministry of Public Service, Constitutional and Political and Religious Affairs between November 2022 to 12 March 2025. And the Ministry of Constitution, Religious and Indigenous Affairs and Transportation since March 13th, 2025. In March 2025, the PCC published detailed recommendations for reforming the Constitution of Belize, and the recommendations were submitted to me as Prime Minister in May of 2025, some 30 months or 2 years and 6 months after the Commission commenced its work. The Act, Mr. Speaker, was amended to allow the Commission more time to complete the report. The Act was also amended to provide for the report to be laid before the National Assembly by the Prime Minister within 1 year after it was received. It was previously to be laid before the National Assembly 60 days after receipt. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the government, I seek your indulgence for the delay in bringing the report to be laid before the House in May of this year. But, Mr. Speaker, it will become apparent to all why there was a need for more time for all to reach this point where we are today, with the report being laid before this Honourable House and being formally accessible to the general public. That report of the PCC, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, spanned more than 129 pages and contained some 167 recommendations for reform. But, Mr. Speaker, as one can imagine, presenting a government with some 167 recommendations for constitutional reform presents in its own sets of difficulties. Starting with the obvious, Mr. Speaker, all 167 recommendations cannot be taken on board. So the problem begins. Which of these 167 recommendations should be pursued? Faced with these heavy and weighty decisions and decision-making, the government engaged the services of a group of external constitutional experts, which included well-known human rights attorney, Mr. Edward Fitzgerald, KC. This group of external constitutional experts worked for more than 8 months, reviewing and analyzing the recommendations of the PPC. They produced in March of this year a report titled An Independent Legal Analysis of the Recommendations Made by the People's Constitution Commission. Speaking on the breadth and scope of the PCC recommendations, the external constitutional experts explained that, and I quote, "The recommendations are wide-ranging and extensive," end of quote, and include removal of the British monarch as Belize's head of state and replacement of the Governor General with an elected Prime Minister, establishment of an elected Senate, creation of a constitutional court, finalizing the abolition of economic citizenship, enshrining a right of freedom of the press, enshrining a right to collective bargaining, to name a few. For context, Mr. Speaker, we are to be reminded that the current Constitution of Belize has only 145 provisions and 4 schedules. In conducting their work, the constitutional experts reviewed and assessed each of the PCC's recommendations using 8 guiding criteria. 1, governance. Does the proposal define who holds power, how they are chosen or removed, what they can and cannot do, and how conflicts can be resolved? 2, fundamental rights. Are citizens' rights at stake? Does the proposal, at a minimum, meet international standards for the protection of human rights, including those of minorities? 3, durability. Will the proposed change make sense in years to come? Constitutions are designed to outlast governments and cultural trends. 4, entrenched wordiness. Is the proposal so fundamental that changing it in future should require supermajorities and delay periods? 5, Legitimacy. Does the proposal reflect cross-party, cross-society consensus? 6. Justificability. Can courts enforce the provisions without becoming policymakers? 7. Design versus implementation. Does the proposed change set principles rather than attempt to make detailed and specific provisions? And 8. Capacity and practical realism. Can the state realistically deliver what the text promises? Additionally, all recommendations were considered in light of the core constitutional rule called the, and I quote, basic deep structure doctrine. This doctrine, crafted by the courts, is based on the universal acceptance that a democratic state, such as Belize, has structural and substantive features and values of its constitution that constitute this basic deep structure. All the recommendations as well, Mr. Speaker, were reviewed and analyzed within the context of the existing structure of the Constitution of Belize. Following this exercise, the external constitutional experts then considered the suitability of each recommendation for inclusion in the Constitution of Belize. In this regard, the recommendations were categorized as follows. 1, Category C. The proposed change is constitutional in nature and could appropriately be located in the Constitution. 2, Category L. The proposed change may be broadly considered quote-unquote constitutional in nature, but does not necessarily belong in the Constitution and are better left to legislation or policy. 3, Category U. The proposed change is unnecessary or inappropriate. And Category 4, Category D. The proposed change is one which requires further discussion and debate at the local level. Mr. Speaker, following the exercise, 53 of the 167 recommendations made the PCCs by the PPC were identified by the external constitutional experts as being fully, quote, constitutional in nature and therefore could appropriately be located in a constitution. Following from this process of review and analysis and categorization of the recommendation conducted by the external constitutional experts, these 53 recommendations deemed constitutional in nature and could appropriately be located in the Constitution were further reviewed and analyzed by attorneys within the Attorney General's Ministry and the Ministry of Constitution, Religious and Indigenous Affairs and Transportation. They reviewed the recommendations within the local context and the jurisprudential position of each recommendation. Mr. Speaker, a whole lot of work has been done throughout this process to bring us where we are today. And I, on behalf of the government, commend all those who have been involved in this process to date, including the commissioners and the public officers in the various assigning ministries. So, what is the next step in this process? According to the Act, Section 22, a resolution is to be put before the National Assembly declaring that the matter stated in the report, whether the Belize Constitution should be repealed and replaced or amended, is of sufficient national importance that it should be submitted to the electors for their view through a referendum. But, Mr. Speaker, before such a resolution is put before the National Assembly, it seems sensible that the government engages in a public awareness campaign on these recommendations of the PPC, of the PCC. Again, all the recommendations cannot be taken on board. However, this consultation process will allow the public a mechanism to review and analyze recommendations, to understand government's rationale and approach on the recommendations, and thus allow government to receive further feedback from the public. We anticipate this to take 6 to 8 months. Mr. Speaker, my government is committed to the redistricting exercise to be started afresh. To trigger the restart of the redistricting exercise, there are a number of constitutional amendments that will need to be pursued. The Elections and Boundaries Commission, at paragraph 116 of its 2023 report, had made recommendations relating to the amendment to Section 90 of the Constitution to, for instance, include a national mean of registered electors and include a threshold limit to allow for the increase or decrease of the number of registered electors in each division. We will be coming to the House in September with a bill to amend the Constitution of Belize to give effect to some of these recommendations so that the redistricting exercise can start anew. This should not be taken as working in conflict with the larger constitutional reform process of the PCC, Mr. Speaker. It is government addressing in real time matters that need to be addressed. Mr. Speaker, it is true that this PCC constitutional reform process has been a lengthy one, but it is also true that to achieve serious, real and meaningful constitutional reform, the processes we are going through must occur. I encourage all Belizeans to assess and review the PCC report with its recommendations, and over the next months, as government engages in awareness campaign, I encourage all Belizeans to participate in a sober and responsible manner. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, that paper is ordered to lie on the table. I now recognize the Minister of Agriculture, Food Security and New Growth Industries.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to present and lay on the table sessional papers HR 104/1/14, Supplies Control Prices Amendment number 2022 Regulations 2026. Number HR 105/1/14, Supplies Control Prices Amendment number 23 Regulations 2026. HR 106/114, Supplies Control Prices Amendment number 24 Regulations 2026. HR 106A 1/14, Supplies Control Prices Amendment number 25 Regulations 2026.
Honourable members, those papers are ordered to lie on the table.
Presentation of reports from select committees.
I recognize the Honourable Chairperson of the Finance and Economic Development Committee.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I rise to present and lay sessional papers number HR 107/1/14, report from the Finance and Economic Development Committee on the Revenue Authority Bill 2026. Paper number HR 108/1/14, report from the Finance and Economic Development Committee on the Millennium Challenge Account, Belize Authority Amendment Bill 2026. And HR 109/1/14, report from the Finance Economic Development Committee on the Inter-American Development Bank support to civil service modernization project US $8 million. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, those reports are ordered to lie on the table. I recognize the Honourable Chairperson of the Education, Sports and Housing Committee.
I rise to present and lay sessional papers Number HR 109A/1/14. Report from the Education, Sports and Housing Committee on Education Bill 2026. HR 109B/1/14. Report from the Education, Sports and Housing Committee on the Technical and Vocational Education and Training Bill 2026.
Honorable members, those reports are ordered to lie on the table. I recognize the Honorable Chairperson of the National Security and Immigration Committee.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker and all members. Mr. Speaker, I rise to present and lay on the table sessional papers number HR 110/1/14, report from the National Security and Immigration Committee on the National Security Council Amendment Bill 2026.
Honorable members, that report is ordered to lie on the table.
Of bills.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Constitution and Religious Affairs, Indigenous Affairs and Transformation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to everyone. Mr. Speaker, this is the Public Transportation Investment Bill 2026. I rise to introduce a bill for an act to approve, ratify, confirm the government's investment in the National Bus Company Limited, including by way of transfer to and vesting of certain public transport assets in the company, to provide for certain exemptions from taxes and duties proposed to be granted to the National Bus Company Limited, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Mr. Speaker, this bill has the recommendation of Cabinet, and I'd like to ask your permission to give a little background on this particular bill. Mr. Speaker and colleagues, as you know, we have been working diligently from last year, May or so, in vigorous consultations with the highway intercity bus sector. That sector includes the operators between our municipalities. At that point, it did not include operators that go from villages to municipalities, nor the other sector that has to do with school bus transportation, nor with those charter companies that have to do with primarily serving the tourism sector. We focus on the one that perhaps has the most implications on the most people in our country. The buses that take our workers, the buses that take our people from municipality to municipality every day for various reasons, because they're going to go to work. We have numerous workers who use our bus system every day. During the work week in particular, you have people who are traveling for medical purposes and a whole litany of things that our people require the bus system for their daily livelihood. Our estimates are that across the country we have anywhere between 8,000 and 12,000 of our Belizeans traveling every day. And during specific peak times of the year, that can raise as much as 16,000 people a day. In any country, Mr. Speaker and colleagues, the bus transportation sector is a backbone of the economy. If we have a weak, unreliable, unsafe transport sector, it will adversely impact our ability as a nation to move forward to attain sustainable human development. In countries that are progressive, you will see that they would have invested significantly in their intercity bus transportation sector, because it has many effects on other sectors of the economy. So, from an economic perspective, on a macro level, the intercity bus system has a direct impact on many sectors, because you have many people who need the bus transportation system, where the school bus system doesn't cover a few areas. Students use the bus system. Many times on weekends, when the students are going home or when it's vacation time, they will use the bus system. So on a macro level, there's lots of connectivity that is impacted by the bus system. Clearly, at a social level, the bus system impacts our people. We will have more ability to be mobile, to be able to take care of our daily affairs with a more reliable, more efficient bus system that serves our people geographically, equitably across the country. And certainly, if you look from an environmental point of view, we've also had a system that is reliant on diesel fuel, fossil fuels, that put a tax on our imports. $16 million a year of diesel imports. What we've been experiencing over the past 25 years has been a major deterioration of our intercity bus system that has had a significant adverse impact on the quality of life of our people, and especially on our vulnerable Belizeans who need the bus system, don't have a car and have to rely on a bus passing their community to be able to go from point A to point B. And that bus system has gotten worse and worse every year. Now, I'll stick a pin on that, because I would believe that everyone would agree that the intercity bus system is indeed a classic case of a public utility, akin with the need for electricity to reach everybody, for water to reach everybody. Now, there are even some economists who want to classify it as a public good. They have the little issue that you have to pay to get on the bus. But in certain very progressive societies, they're even clamoring for the state to pay for the cost of transportation. And you know that in certain big cities, that is already the case. So it's not necessarily classified as a public good in that respect, but it's definitely a public utility. And in that respect, it requires that the public sector, that the government take a very focused, particular interest in what is happening in the intercity bus sector. And unfortunately, especially over those infamous 12 and a half, 13 years, we saw a tremendous deterioration and neglect of our transport sector, where indiscriminately road service permits were issued out without any proper analysis of the impact of those road service permits on the investments of operators who are already on the highways. The terminals left in a state of disgrace. Our government has taken on investments in our terminals now to try to make them more decent for the people who use them every day. So the model that was allowed to fester over the years has led to a system that has worked against the well-being of the very people who need to use it. Why? Because we know the stories, we've seen them on media all the time. Buses racing on the highways, breaking down on the road, water coming in through the window, having the floors, you could see the road from inside the bus, all kinds of things. Some buses catching fire. Clearly, not a system that any Belizean could be proud of. We certainly, on this end, have taken shame on what is out there, as we should. As a nation, we should all have bowed down our heads in shame for what has been festering over these years. And this is what has driven us to take an innovative, transformative approach to the problem. We do not wish to piecemeal and have a band-aid solution. There was a suggestion that seemed on its surface to be worthy, which was that you just extend the road service permit by a few years and that will solve the problem. The operators were saying, well, I need to go to the bank. I need to be able to buy a better bus. And so I can't go with a 1-year road or 2-year road service permit. Sounds good. But if everybody's road service permit were extended, say, to 5, 7 years, whatever, and if the banking sector were to yield and believe that that's a remedy for profitability, which in our view they would not have done so, then, and the operators would have gotten newer equipment, it would have not changed and affected the fundamental problem of the bus sector, which is the fact that you have a certain market size, but an excess supply of operators out there. 31 operators pre-March 2026. When, for some of you who could remember, when the bus service started back in the early 70s and early 80s, you had 5 bus operators. You had James from Punta Gorda, you had Z-Line from Dangriga, you had Belizean Queen, Novello from Benke, you had Batiz from Belicity, and you had Venus from Corozal. And these operators had gentlemen, or they were all gentlemen, could have been gentlewomen's agreements on how to operate in a manner that would not create a setting of undermining each other's sustainability and profitability. And they maintained that for almost 20 years or so. And then other operators received road service permits, and it went up to 9 operators. At that point, the operators came together and decided that that setting was going in the wrong direction for the continued quality of service that they were giving at that time. The operators themselves built the terminals. You had terminals in Corozal, you had a terminal in Belicity, terminal in Belmopan, terminal in Benke, terminal in Dangriga, terminal in Punta Gorda, that the operators built to serve their people. So the industry had been going in the right direction until they started to become undermined by other operators entering the market. And then, after the default of the loan by the Novello consolidation, for which only James was not a part of that, then there was an indiscriminate, and in particular, as I said, over the infamous 12 and a half years, issuing of permits. And that clearly is a classic case in economics, as we'd call it, right? A race to the bottom. Mr. Speaker, colleagues, our people deserve better. And the magnitude of the problem deserves deeper analysis than just extending the time period of the road service permits. Because what would that have done? It would have put the operators in deeper red because they would have to invest in a bus not costing them $25,000 or $30,000, but perhaps $70,000, $80,000, $90,000. But it would have not changed the economics of the sector because it's the same number of people traveling on all these buses that the operators had. And so the new buses would have not translated into an improved profitability of any of the operators. In fact, operators have told us that especially the smaller ones, have told us that one of the main reasons they wanted to get a newer bus was so that they would have a bus that's able to race better with the bigger operators. Because you see, who gets to the villages first? At the bumps and all of that, pick up the people along the way. Clearly exacerbating the racing problem. So, the analysis that we did showed that in fact it was this proliferation of road service permits that was the cause of all of these problems. And so in sitting and meeting with the stakeholders, with the operators, for which we had numerous meetings, we agreed that a public-private partnership model would be the way to go forward. Now, note that the government had the option to nationalize the sector. But what would that have meant? It would have meant that government would have had to find the money to compensate the operators for their businesses. The independent auditors who valued the 17 operators now that started out the NBC, we have one more that is coming in, and 4 more who are waiting in line. That added up to a little over $19 million. Extrapolating from there, with the remaining operators, you would be talking about a government requirement of over $25 million to have taken out all the operators in a nationalization. But instead, what we did was to have all the operators agree who joined the National Bus Company to be a part of a PPP. You have not heard anybody come in the media who are members of the NBC to say that their hands were twisted to be a member of the NBC. On the contrary, they have come in the public and they have stated their support, and they have also stated the benefits that that structure is giving to them. Now, the NBC has the full coverage of the Southern Corridor, which is from Punta Gorda all the way to Belmopan, and then through the Coastal Road all the way to the George Price Highway at La Democracia. And it also has about 83% of the coverage from Benqueviejo to Belize City. You're not hearing about anything with racing on those corridors anymore. The incidents of buses breaking down have fallen dramatically. NBC has already invested in 8 newer buses. And when we're talking newer, not just newer Bluebirds and the way in the same manner that we've had before. No, these buses are all bucket seat buses with air conditioning. All the buses that have been brought in. And there is resources to buy up to 15 buses, and that is an ongoing process. That is an ongoing process. Along with that, the NBC is also investing in a camera system that you have in each of the buses. You have a camera now that at the headquarters of the NBC, they can see where the buses are across the country on a screen, and they can also see what is happening in front of the bus and inside the bus, helping us to monitor for safety and for quality of service. And if you go now to the terminal in Belize City, you will see that the entrance has been upgraded. And you come to the one right here in Belmopan, you will see that a significant investment has been made. And I want to thank my colleagues in Cabinet, Prime Minister, for that $2.5 million that has been dedicated to the Belmopan and to the Belize City terminals. So, significant improvements have occurred with the model of a PPP. Now, initially, the investment of the government in the NBC was to be the terminals themselves. The Cabinet, in its wisdom, deliberated and decided that the terminals would instead be leased to the NBC, and that value of commitment in shares would be in terms of buses, because, as you know, the model over the next year and a half or so to the end of 2027 is for all the buses to be transitioned to electric buses. And government's investment now, valuing about $20.9 million for those terminals, will now be invested in value of electric buses, which will have a direct impact on the bottom line of the company as well, because, as you know, electric bus energy costs is only about 20 to 22% of diesel buses. And those numbers come from the pilot project that was done by the UNDP with funding from our friends from the European Union. So, clearly the model that we have is a model of innovation. It's not a model of Band-Aid. It's a model that will transform our intercity bus system so that our people can be served properly. It's now shifted from a focus on operators and what government is doing to a focus on the actual commuters, where the focus should have been in the first place, where the focus was in the 70s and 80s. And with that new focus now, we're talking about using electronic ticketing systems that have been piloted already in Belize City so that the company can become more profitable again. We know that a lot of the issues of operators for day one has been getting in all their income into their bank accounts. And with an electronic payment system that is now used everywhere in the world, that's not new technology anymore. The promise is there for added profitability for the National Bus Company. So I humbly ask all colleagues from both sides of the House to support this bill. When a person gets on a bus, it's not from this side of the aisle or that side of the aisle. It's a Belizean. It's a Belizean who needs transportation. And so I ask for the support. As the public knows, we at the ministry have reached out to the opposition. And I'm grateful, Madam Leader, that in those you have obliged, and we've had meetings with you. We've also had meetings with social partners because it's critical that everybody is on board. In our media presentations, we've asked on talk shows for the whole nation to come together so that this can become a reality. And it's already becoming a reality with the National Bus Company giving better service to our people, a little bit better day by day by day. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful for the time offered and for the attention to these matters. And we look forward to further discussions at the committee level, whatever needs to be done. I want to take this opportunity, please, last thing, Mr. Speaker, to thank our amazing team at the Ministry of Transportation who have worked extensively. And we have a few of them here viewing. Our CEO and our team really have worked very hard. Now recognize too that 40% of the NBC are the operators. They have come on board and they have worked hard too, working with us to make the right decisions at the board level and at the operational level as well. And then I want to thank all the new people who have joined the leadership of the NBC. Bright young people, all of them young, younger than, what, 35, and look very young from here. I've not checked the Social Security card directly, but young, bright people who work very, very hard and who give us great hope for the future of this country. And they're the ones who are going to take us forward into an era in which our intercity bus system and other sectors of the bus service across the country will be modern, will be efficient, will be to the service of all of our people across this country. So, Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity.
Honourable members, that bill is referred to the Public Utilities, Transport and Communications Committee for examination, consideration and report.
Bill for an act to approve, ratify, confirm the government's investment in the National Bus Company Limited, including by way of transfer to and vesting of certain public transport assets in the company to provide for certain exemptions from taxes and duties proposed to be granted to the NBC Limited and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 12.8, I move that the proceedings on the order paper may be entered upon and proceeded with at this day's sitting at any hour due opposed.
Honourable members, the question is that the proceeding of the order paper may be entered upon and proceeded with all this day's sitting at any hour though proposed. All those in favour, kindly say aye. Aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. I recognize the Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this is the Credit Unions Bill 2026. I rise to introduce a bill for an act to provide for the continuance, registration, licensing, management, and supervision of credit unions and for connected purposes. Mr. Speaker, this bill has the recommendation of the Cabinet. By way of introduction, I'm sorry. Sorry. By way of an introduction, let me say that this credit union bill is a new piece of legislation that marks a decisive step towards strengthening Belize's financial architecture and safeguarding the savings of more than 166,000 Belizeans. This bill modernizes the legal framework governing credit unions, replacing the outdated Credit Unions Act, Chapter 314, which no longer reflects the size, complexity, or importance of credit unions, and replaces it with a better law designed to strengthen oversight, enhance governance, and align the sector with international standards and best practices. Since the Office of the Governor of the Central Bank of Belize assumed the responsibility of Registrar of Credit Unions in 2005, credit unions have grown exponentially. There are currently 8 credit unions with collective assets of approximately $1.57 billion Belize dollars and member deposits of $1.28 billion. The largest credit union, Holy Redeemer Credit Union Limited, is the 3rd largest financial institution in the country, with assets totaling $889.1 million. This growth underscores the vital role credit unions play in promoting financial inclusion, community development, and community empowerment. It also highlights the need for a robust legislative framework capable of addressing increasing risks and governance. This bill introduces a licensing process for the establishment of new credit unions, ensuring that only institutions with adequate financial resources, effective governance structure, and appropriate operational capacity are permitted to undertake credit union activities. In doing so, this legislation will not only strengthen individual credit unions, but also contribute to the stability and resilience of Belize's wider financial system. The bill further reinforces transparency and accountability by setting clear expectations for reasonable leadership, sound decision-making, and timely corrective action. It will also preserve the principles of fairness, transparency, and due process by strengthening the provisions governing an independent appeals tribunal, providing an appropriate mechanism for reviewing regulatory decisions made under the Act. Mr. Speaker, the Credit Union Bill 2026 is a major step towards in protecting the funds of people like yourself, the Leader of the Opposition, and myself. All of us, I think most of us here in this chamber are members of the credit union. So it protects every Belizean who is a member of a credit union. It will improve financial stability and secure the long-term sustainability of this very important sector. It is important to point out that this bill is being introduced after extensive consultations with stakeholders and represents a balanced approach of modernization, one that respects the cooperative principles at the heart of credit unions, while ensuring that they are equipped to operate safely, responsibly, and effectively. I therefore present this bill for consideration and ask our colleagues on both sides of the aisle just to lend their support. As I said earlier, this bill has the recommendation of the Cabinet. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, that bill is referred to the Finance and Economic Development Committee for examination, consideration, and report.
Bill for an act to provide for the continuance, registration, licensing, management, and supervision of credit unions and for connected purposes. Motions relating to the business or sittings of the House.
I recognize the Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I move that at its rising today, the House adjourn to a date to be fixed by the Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is that the House at its rising today adjourn to a date to be fixed by the Speaker. All those in favour, kindly say aye. Aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Public business, government business motions.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this is a commercial loan from Export-Import Bank of the Republic of China, Taiwan, $100 million loan, motion 2026. Mr. Speaker, I want to blame the Honourable Member for Queen Square. You want me to finish quickly? Mr. Speaker, with your permission, not to repeat the recitals, I move, now therefore be it resolved that this Honourable House, being satisfied that the loan proceeds will assist the efforts of the Government of Belize to control personnel costs, improve workforce planning, and ensure public funds are used efficiently, approves and confirms that the government may enter into a loan contract with the Inter-American Development Bank on the terms and conditions set out above, and further authorizes the Minister of Finance to execute and deliver said loan contract and all other documents associated therewith.
Honorable members, the question is now therefore be it resolved that this Honorable House, being satisfied that the loan proceeds will assist the efforts of the Government of Belize to control personnel costs, improve workforce planning, and ensure public funds are used efficiently, approve and confirms that the government may enter into a loan contract with the Inter-American Development Bank on the terms and conditions set out above, and further authorize the Minister of Finance to execute and deliver the said loan contract and all other documents associated therewith. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this is a commercial loan from Export-Import Bank of the People's of the Republic of China, Taiwan, $100 million, the loan motion 2026. I move thereas the Government of Belize and the Government of the Republic of China, Taiwan, have maintained a long-standing relationship of bilateral cooperation and development assistance, and thereas under the framework of this bilateral cooperation, Belize has benefited over the years from long-term financial support facilitated through the financial institutions of the Republic of China, Taiwan. And whereas, in keeping with the objectives of further promoting and strengthening bilateral cooperation between the two countries, the Government of Belize and the Government of the Republic of China, Taiwan, entered into a new Memorandum of Understanding on bilateral cooperation signed on 2nd June 2025. And whereas the said Memorandum of Understanding establishes a 5-year cooperation framework for the period 2025 to 2026,